Hello everyone, my name is Shazni and I'm a Director Solutions Architecture at WSO2 and I lead the Solutions Architecture for Integration. WSO2 is a global organization which has 100% open source software and SaaS solutions for integration, API management, identity and access management, as well as internal developed platforms. My topic today is running a successful API program, best practices, challenges, and pitfalls. API enables modernization. And to see how APIs enable modernization, let's look at the state of the APIs. According to a survey conducted by FI, there are about 200 million APIs in use today. And the same survey, on an aggressive basis, finds that there will be about 1 billion APIs by 2030, which, in other words, to say that there will be 4 times more APIs created in the next 4 or 5 years to come than what is in use today, which is a phenomenal growth. And on the right side graph, you see that APIs are being used in many different verticals, not just technology companies, but also in healthcare, governments, telcos, uh, banking and finance domain, and various other sectors as well, which has a good distribution, which is indicative of how important APIs are in those different verticals. And to see who works with APIs, and of course, 70% or so are still engineers or developers, which is normally the case. But you also see that executives, solutions architects, managers, and others also use APIs, not indirectly but directly, which is also very indicative of how impactful APIs are for modern businesses. This talk is about an API program, and let's see, why do we need an API program? And if you don't have an API program, you could end up in something called an API sprawl, which is in another way to say that you will have a chaotic API development and an unprecedented API growth in your organization in an uncontrolled manner. APIs also should support long-term strategies of organizations, not just something that you should develop and done with it in about a year or two. It should support your organization's long-term strategy. And you should have a structured progression as you move along in your API program, and you should have a proper strategy in place. And that's one reason why you should have an API program. And APIs should align with organizational mission, not just a technical aspect, but to see that as a business value proposition, you should have a proper API program. To come up with a proper API program, it's very imperative to have a maturity model defined. And this is a 5 stage reference maturity model. What is important for your organization is that you come up with a maturity model that suits your organization. But this is just a reference model where I define the 5 stages as the stage one being the data exchange stage, second stage, integration stage, collaboration stage, value realization stage, and finally a business transformation stage. So this is just an indication of where you are and where you want to be. And in general, these API programs do not have a destination. It's a journey, and you keep on continuing, evolving in your API programs to get the maximum benefit of those APIs. There are different types of APIs. Basically, you find in enterprises private APIs, partner APIs, and public APIs. The names itself says what are they, but private APIs are just for internal use. Partner APIs you expose to your partners, and your public APIs are available for public to use. So that doesn't mean that anyone will be able to use those APIs. You will have proper guardrails, but what that means is you, with those security and other guardrails, you make the API available for the right people to use. To look at the different usage of these different types of APIs, you see 56% of those APIs are private APIs. This is according to a survey conducted by Postman, and 26% being partner APIs and 18% being public APIs, which is a good distribution of different types of APIs in the enterprises. And if you are starting with an API program, it's good to start with private APIs. Why? The private APIs bring in a lot of business benefits, and it helps enterprises start with an API thinking if they don't have already. And it helps build foundational capabilities where you can use those APIs for reuse and scalability aspects and so forth. And it fuels the modernization journey. And more importantly, it allows enterprises to do experimentation as well as to make mistakes. You don't want to right away expose your APIs to your partners or even to public to use. And if you don't do it right, and that could tarnish the organization's reputation. So keeping your APIs private initially will help you do those experimentation and make mistakes. And having those APIs in place will reduce time to market for your applications, because now you will have reusable set of foundational capabilities. And this will also help improve your internal collaboration as well, and because you can structure your teams based on APIs and whatnot. Now let's look at what are the different aspects in different stages, and what best practices you can follow in each stage. So your organization don't have to start with the stage one already, and this is a reference model. Maybe in your organization you're already in stage two or stage three, or maybe even to the level of having a proper business transformation, in which case that is great. So stage one, in general, you can start off with a private APIs, or internal APIs, as I mentioned, and those APIs could just be designed for data exchange, where you get data from your systems of records and move around as it is needed by your business. And what is important is now you will have autonomy for different teams to select different technologies to write your APIs, and it could be Node.js, Golang, or whatever that fits your requirement. You can use those to write or implement your APIs or microservices, and you will have a very simple API lifecycle to start with. You'll implement, you'll test, and you will manually deploy that into relevant environments like development, test, or production. And then mostly your internal applications, which will be your internal consumers, will be using those APIs. And at this stage, typically you might be using SOAP or REST to start with, but there are other types of APIs. And if you're already ahead on this maturity model, you might be using those APIs as well. But maybe to start with, this is a good way to start. And at this stage, probably not many enterprises will have proper security and traffic controls, which also means they might not be having a proper API management product in place or solution in place, and might even have minimal documentation. As best practices at this stage, it is good to identify what are the common data extractions and transformations you want to do, and think early about how to avoid your API sprawl, not just to create APIs on every single thing that you think of, but think of what needs to be developed as APIs, which is important for your business, and design for reusability and scalability, and more importantly, quantify the benefits of these data exchanges with APIs, because that way you can pass on this information to your leadership team, because the leadership buying in for these kind of programs are important for you to move on with APIs, and to show the importance of how much benefit that it brings on to different projects. At stage two, you could probably bring in CI/CD, automated pipelines, for you to deploy your developed APIs into different environments. Earlier on, you might be doing that. You would have done manually, but at this stage, you might bring in a CI/CD platform. And think about right API architecture styles, because this is the integration stage, and you should not just restrict it for REST or SOAP. Think about the right architectural styles, maybe WebSockets, gRPC, and so forth, right? And looking into something like a distributed domain-driven design, which are mostly business-oriented domain APIs, maybe marketing APIs, maybe finance APIs, and so forth. You could focus on those kinds of APIs and help structure your teams based on that. And at this stage, most probably API product managers and enterprise architects will also get involved, most probably, and then or enterprises should also have some level of governance at this stage. Earlier stages that might not happen, but it's good to start early on the governance aspects, on coding standards and design documents, things like that. And in your organization, this could have various different forms. AP architectural styles I spoke about, it doesn't have to be just SOAP or REST, but in modern contexts, you also see other types of APIs, GraphQL, gRPC, WebSocket, webhooks, and whatnot. And there are many other types as well. And choose the right architectural styles for your integration, and that's very important as well in your journey with API programs. At this stage, bring in CI/CD earlier on, and the other fact is to promote your API use internal to your organization, because you need to make sure that people are reusing those APIs. Otherwise, it's gonna create some technical debt. People duplicating the same thing over and over again. So promoting internally using talks, enablements, and hackathons are very important. And treat your internal stakeholders as if they are external customers, because you shouldn't be thinking, okay, I'm just developing this API for one of my friends and one of my colleagues, and I can go describe how to develop using these APIs, because it's easy to communicate with them. And if you do that thing, and you are setting the stage for failure. And that's why you need to treat your internal stakeholders as customers. And at this stage, you have to make sure you are using some standardized data formats, not like anything that you think or proprietary to your organization, something relevant to your business. And if you can keep it more standardized formats like JSON, XML, that would help a lot. Stage three is about collaboration stage. When you talk about collaboration, you initially think of your partners, and it's a good time for you to now expose your APIs to your partners using your B2B API management and B2B integration strategies. And at this stage is a good stage for you to bring in an API management product. Initially, you would have just started off developing your APIs using some code first approach, but bringing in your API management brings up the question of code first versus contract first. More and more organizations these days are uh, moving towards contract first, because that helps you know their partners and other application developers to try out those APIs even before those are implemented. So you can get prototyping done, API mocking done quite earlier on with contract first approach rather than with code first approach. And at this stage, you need to make sure you have proper comprehensive API documentation, because now you're going to expose these APIs to your partners, and partners, application developers cannot always reach out to your developers, and you need to make sure that you have proper API documentation, and it's at the same time strong API security in place, and some metrics for you to calculate on how the usage of those APIs are. And these APIs need to have like clean experience layer or clean experience APIs should be in place for them to have an encouragement to use your APIs. And as best practices, you need to make sure you have a hassle-free sign-up process from your developer portal for your partner application developers to sign up and start utilizing your APIs right away. And you need to try collaborate with your partners to at the design stage as well, like understand what they really want out of your systems to carry out their businesses and so forth, and collaborate with them rather than you design something and provide that to them and get feedback later, which could have results, which could result in more and more changes in your APIs, and which also means a longer life cycle for development and so forth. And introduce prototyping earlier on, again, even after discussing with them, collaborating with them. Don't right away jump into implementation. do a prototype with some contract first approach, do mocking, and give those as prototyped APIs to get early feedback so that you can refine the API interface before you start implementing those APIs. And at this stage, it's good for you to also think about various different client technologies and have some SDKs ready for different kinds of applications to utilize your APIs. So partner APIs bring various different business benefits, and one is definitely it helps scale partner onboarding, and more importantly, it helps continuity in your business supply chain because partners bring in various additional value additions in terms of your supply chain when it comes to various businesses, right? And it also helps their supply chain to be managed very easily as well, and this helps them to create their own customer facing applications, which also means that you those partners will help expand your businesses into new markets, and that's one aspect where channel businesses help enterprises a lot. And having partner APIs also helps build trust in channel business relationship as well. And coming into stage four, where the value realization happens, you could now think of exposing your APIs as public APIs. And at this stage, you have to make sure you have a clean, robust architecture, which also means you could think of various different deployment strategies where whether you want your APIs to run on-prem or on Kubernetes cluster, or maybe even on an iPaaS or an API SaaS product, depending on whether it is an integration or a proxy API and so forth. So inclusion of an iPaaS or API SaaS kind of products might come in handy at this stage, and may even be multiple API gateways from different vendors depending on your different use cases might be applicable at this stage as well, because now at this stage you are making your APIs available for public to use, which means you need to make sure those APIs are always available, and you cannot afford those APIs to be unavailable at any cost. And but at the same time, you have to make sure that you don't hurt yourself with uh, cost, and that's why you need to have a robust architecture and best use of infrastructure, and that's why you need to be very uh, uh, concerned about whether you should have an iPaaS product or API SaaS product, or where you want to have your deployment for optimization purposes. At this stage, you also need to make sure you do a lot of evangelization. Aggressive evangelization is important for others to know that you have an API available for use, and clean architecture for optimum resource usage, because you need to make sure that you don't have a cost implications by making your APIs publicly available. And strong authentication and authorization for your portals and APIs are very important at this stage. And your APIs should be easy to use, experience APIs, and this is applicable at the partner API stage as well, and it's more important at this stage because now you're making it available for everybody to use your APIs. And the final stage, it doesn't have to be final, as I mentioned, it's a journey, but this is kind of a direction to go into the business transformation stage. At this stage, you might probably be having an API marketplace, because it's not just one vendor product that you might be using for your gateways. It might be like multiple products, and at which point having an API marketplace will be useful as well. And you can build a collaborative community for wider API adoption at this stage, and various different people will get involved at this stage, like developer community, application developers, external application developers, your partner application developers, and at this stage you can also think of with right level of adoption to make some revenue out of your APIs as well, so you can start monetizing it as well. And uh, and at this stage, it doesn't have to be at this stage. It could come in today's context, could come even at the earlier stage as possible as well. You could use AI to assist with your API design, implementation, testing, even documentation generation, and even SDK generation as well. And there are API management products out there which can give some uh, capabilities with AI to assist with these things, and even integration products for that matter. And it doesn't have to be at this stage. You could explore these capabilities at an earlier stage as well. And strong API governance at this stage is paramount, and you could bring in all of these capabilities at previous stages as well. But at this stage, you cannot afford to not have strong API governance. And traditionally, these have been done mostly in a manual way, but now with AI coming into the picture, you could look into how governance could be done with AI. And robust observability at this stage is also must, so that you can look into various optimization mechanisms for you to move on with your business journey, API business journey. And at this stage, as best practices, use APIs. And as I said, it doesn't have to be at this stage. You could do it in other stages as well. Promote your API usage across wider community. Have strong API governance, of course, in an automated way, if possible, with AIs, relieving your important human resources to do like innovative work than doing just being a governance. And have automated billing for monetization, uh, uh, which can result in like more revenue streams for your organization as well. Finally, I wanted to wrap up this talk with some common challenges and pitfalls, because in an API program, you will also face challenges and pitfalls, even though you can follow some best practices. Uh, so if you don't do it right, and you could end up with API sprawl and technical debt, as I mentioned at the beginning of this talk. And poor design could be something that you could face if you don't strategize it properly. Inefficient integrations might happen sometimes. Like you could have like the most beautiful experience APIs, easy to use APIs, but if inefficient integrations are in place, your APIs are going to suffer in terms of performance, and people are not going to use it. And this could all result from inadequate planning, lack of governance, and weaker strategy. So whatever you see at the lower left side could result whatever is just spoke about on API sprawl and others, and which in turn could have challenges when it comes to adoption, and even internal resistance for reuse of those APIs. And this could be tackled with training, but some organization might face uh, challenges, and this could be a pitfall for them for not doing training and not doing hackathons and talks, as I mentioned, to promote your API use. And with all of these, you could still have limited market reach, and if you don't do evangelization, and if your APIs don't have proper security measures, people will be reluctant to use your API. So those could be a challenge and a pitfall, and limited external adoption in the end might not take you to where you want your API programs to be. So, as a key takeaway in this talk, I want to say that you need to have a proper API program with a maturity model that suits your organization. And once you have that, and if you haven't started with an API program, start with private APIs. Choose right architecture styles and models at your integration stage. Explore partner API capabilities, and then finally think of APIs as business value propositions, and not just as technical aspects. And think APIs as products. And finally, want to wrap up with with successful API programs, it can result in positive business transformation. And that brings to the end of my talk here today. And thank you very much for listening in. And I hope you to see you again in another talk very soon. Thank you very much.